In a distant corner of the galaxy, where stars burned cold and silence stretched endlessly, a desperate plea echoed through the void. It came from the Luminae, a crystalline species whose bodies shimmered with soft, bioluminescent light. For centuries, they had thrived on their homeworld, a planet bathed in eternal twilight. But now, their world was dying. The cause of their suffering was something no one could have predicted, a black ooze that spread like liquid shadow across the land. At first, it seemed harmless, seeping slowly into rivers and forests. But soon, it began devouring everything it touched. Plants turned to dust, animals crumbled into ash, and even the Luminae themselves were not immune. Their once bright forms dimmed as the ooze consumed their energy, leaving them weak and fading. Desperation drove them to act. Solon, the leader of the Luminae, gathered what remained of her people and made a decision. Using ancient technology powered by their own light, they sent out a distress signal across the stars. They didn't know if anyone would hear it or care, but they had to try. If there is life beyond us, Solon whispered to her council, perhaps they will answer. Light years away, on a small blue-green planet called Earth, the message was received. Humanity, though unaware of its significance at first, was uniquely suited to respond. Known throughout the galaxy as Deathworlders, humans lived on a planet so hostile that few alien species dared visit. From towering mountains to scorching deserts, from freezing tundras to stormy oceans, Earth tested every living thing that called it home. And yet, humanity had survived and thrived. Dr. Elena Voss was the one who picked up the faint transmission. A xenobiologist stationed at a remote Antarctic research station, she spent most of her days studying microbial life trapped in ice. Her work was quiet, methodical, and solitary, until the night the signal came through. Sitting alone in her lab, surrounded by humming equipment and glowing monitors, Elena froze as the strange pattern appeared on her screen. It wasn't random noise. It was deliberate, structured, and unmistakably alien. Her heart raced as she analyzed the data. The signal carried fragments of images, an entire world being consumed by darkness, and emotions so raw they felt almost human. Pain, fear, hope. Whoever these beings were, they needed help, and they needed it fast. Elena reported her findings immediately, but skepticism met her claims. Many dismissed the signal as interference or a natural phenomenon. Others argued that involving Earth in alien affairs was reckless. After all, humanity had only recently begun venturing into space, and its history was riddled with violence and conflict. What could Earth possibly offer? But Elena refused to give up. She knew this was more than just science. It was an opportunity. For years, humanity had been labeled as chaotic survivors, a species shaped by struggle and strife. This was their chance to prove otherwise, to show that even Deathworlders could rise above their nature and extend a hand to those in need. As debates raged among governments and organizations, Elena worked tirelessly to decode more of the message. Each fragment revealed new details about the Luminae and their plight. Slowly, support began to grow. Scientists, engineers, and soldiers volunteered for what would become known as Project Starbound. Together, they prepared to embark on a journey unlike any other, a mission to save a dying world and bridge the gap between two vastly different species. Unbeknownst to them, the road ahead would be fraught with danger, sacrifice, and discovery. But for now, hope burned brightly in Elena's eyes as she stared at the stars outside her window. Somewhere out there, someone, or something, was waiting for Earth's answer, and she was determined to make sure humanity replied. This sets the stage for the story while keeping the tone engaging and accessible, introducing key characters and themes without overwhelming detail. Let me know when you'd like me to proceed with Part 2. The signal from the Luminae sparked a firestorm of debate across Earth. News of the alien distress calls spread quickly, thanks to leaks from Elena's research team. Some saw it as a chance for humanity to step onto the galactic stage, not as invaders or conquerors, but as saviors. Others dismissed it as reckless idealism, arguing that Earth had enough problems of its own without risking lives for strangers light years away. At the center of the storm was Captain Marcus Kane, a man whose past made him both respected and feared. A decorated soldier turned reluctant leader, Marcus had spent years trying to escape the shadow of his actions during Earth's last great war. He'd followed orders then, orders that led to the destruction of entire cities and countless civilian deaths. The guilt weighed heavily on him, even though he told himself it was all in the name of survival. When approached about leading Project Starbound, Marcus hesitated. Could someone like him truly make a difference, or would his presence only bring more harm? Despite his doubts, Marcus agreed to join the mission. His tactical expertise was unmatched, and the project needed someone who could navigate danger without hesitation. But deep down, he wondered if this was less about redemption and more about running away from his demons. Zara Lynn, on the other hand, had no such reservations. Growing up in the ruins of an old spaceport, Zara had learned to tinker with whatever scraps she could find. Alien tech fascinated her, especially the wreckage of ships that occasionally crashed near her home. By the time she was 20, she'd reverse-engineered enough alien gadgets to earn a reputation as one of Earth's brightest engineers. For Zara, joining Project Starbound wasn't just about helping aliens. It was about proving herself. She wanted to show the galaxy that humanity wasn't just a bunch of savages clawing at survival. They were innovators, dreamers, and builders. As preparations for the mission began, tensions flared within the team. Scientists argued over how best to approach the black ooze described in the Luminae's message, while soldiers debated whether weapons would be necessary against unknown threats. Meanwhile, politicians back on Earth demanded guarantees that the mission wouldn't endanger human lives unnecessarily. It seemed everyone had an opinion, but few were willing to take responsibility. Elena worked tirelessly to keep the group focused. She organized meetings, shared updates on the Luminae's plight, and reminded everyone why they were doing this. "We're not just saving another species," she said during one heated discussion. "We're showing the universe what we're capable of, that we can rise above our nature and do something selfless." Her words resonated with some, but not all. Lieutenant Harper, a hardened pilot known for her sharp tongue, voiced her concerns openly. "What happens if this goes sideways?" she asked. "If we walk into their world and get ourselves killed, who wins? Not us, not them, nobody." Harper's skepticism mirrored the fears of many aboard the Resolute, the aging colony ship chosen for the journey. Originally designed for terraforming barren planets, the vessel had been retrofitted with cutting-edge technology scavenged from abandoned projects. Its massive engines roared to life during test runs, shaking the ground beneath the launch pad. Yet despite its power, doubts lingered about whether it could withstand whatever horrors awaited them. Amid the chaos, Marcus found himself drawn to Elena. Her determination reminded him of a younger version of himself, the man he used to be before war stripped him of his ideals. He admired her optimism, even as he struggled to share it. One evening, as they stood together watching technicians load supplies onto the ship, Marcus broke the silence. "You really think we can pull this off?" he asked, his voice low. Elena didn't hesitate. "I have to believe we can," she replied. "If we don't try, what does that say about us?" Her answer stayed with Marcus long after their conversation ended. As the days passed and the launch date approached, the crew grew closer, united by a shared purpose. They weren't just representatives of Earth, they were ambassadors of hope. And though none of them knew what lay ahead, they were ready to face it together. On the day of departure, thousands gathered to watch the Resolute ascend into the sky. Among them were skeptics, believers, and dreamers, all holding their breath as humanity took its first step toward the stars. For better or worse, the journey had begun. After months of travel through the cold emptiness of space, the Resolute finally entered orbit around the Luminae homeworld. From above, the planet looked hauntingly beautiful. Swirling clouds of twilight hues painted its atmosphere, But beneath them lay scars of devastation. Vast stretches of land were shrouded in shadow, consumed by the black ooze that crept like a living thing across the surface. The crew stared at the view in silence, each grappling with their own emotions. Hope mingled with fear as they prepared for what came next. Elena stood at the front of the observation deck, her eyes fixed on the dying world below. She had spent countless nights imagining this moment, rehearsing what she would say to the Lumine. But now, faced with the reality of their suffering, words felt inadequate. How could she possibly convey humanity's willingness to help when so much was at stake? Marcus, standing nearby, noticed her unease. "You'll do fine," he said quietly, breaking the quiet hum of the ship. His tone was gruff, but there was kindness behind it, a rare glimpse of the man beneath the hardened exterior. Elena nodded, though she wasn't sure she believed him. Zara, meanwhile, fiddled nervously with a handheld scanner, checking and rechecking the data streaming in from the planet's surface. "Their energy signatures are faint," she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "Whatever this ooze is, it's draining them fast." The decision was made to send a small team down to make first contact. Marcus led the group, accompanied by Elena, Zara, and Harper, whose sharp instincts made her an ideal choice despite her earlier skepticism. As their shuttle descended through the planet's turbulent atmosphere, the air grew thick with tension. None of them knew what awaited them on the ground, or how the Lumine would react to strangers arriving uninvited. When they landed, the scene was both breathtaking and heartbreaking. Towering crystalline structures rose from the earth, glowing faintly in the dim light. Between them, pools of black ooze bubbled ominously, spreading tendrils into every crevice. And then they saw them, the Lumine. Their bodies shimmered weakly, their once brilliant lights flickering like dying stars. One figure stepped forward, taller and brighter than the rest. This was Solon, the leader who had sent the distress signal. "Welcome," a voice echoed in their minds, not spoken aloud, but transmitted directly into their thoughts. It was calm, yet tinged with exhaustion. "You have come far to answer our call." Elena stepped forward hesitantly, her heart pounding. "We're here to help," she said aloud, unsure if the Lumine could understand spoken language. When no response came, she closed her eyes and focused, projecting her thoughts as clearly as she could. To her relief, Solon nodded slightly, acknowledging her effort. Through telepathic communication, Solon explained the origins of the ooze. It had been created accidentally by another advanced species experimenting with dark matter weapons, an act of hubris that spiraled out of control. The Lumine had tried everything to stop it, but their efforts only slowed its progress. Now they were running out of time. As the conversation continued, Marcus found himself struggling with his own emotions. Seeing the Lumine's plight stirred memories of the wars he'd fought in, the destruction he'd witnessed and caused. He clenched his fists tightly, trying to push those thoughts aside, but they lingered like ghosts. Harper, ever practical, broke the somber mood. "If we're going to save your world, we need to know everything about this ooze. What does it want? How does it spread?" Solon hesitated before answering. "It seeks life. Any life. It consumes to grow. We do not know how to stop it." The weight of those words hung heavy in the air. Humanity had taken its first step toward helping the Lumine, but the road ahead promised to be long, dangerous, and uncertain. Back on the shuttle, as they prepared to return to the Resolute, Elena turned to the others. "They're counting on us," she said firmly, "and we can't let them down." For the first time since leaving Earth, everyone agreed. The next morning, the team gathered in the Resolute's command center to plan their next move. The Lumine's description of the black ooze had left them uneasy. It wasn't just a mindless force, it seemed almost alive, driven by an insatiable hunger for energy. If they were going to stop it, they needed to understand how it worked. And that meant venturing deeper into the infected zones. Elena volunteered to lead the expedition, but Marcus insisted on joining her. "You're not going alone," he said firmly. His tone left no room for argument. Zara and Harper rounded out the group, each bringing their unique skills to the mission. As they suited up in protective gear designed to withstand extreme environments, Zara double-checked her equipment, muttering under her breath about potential malfunctions. Harper rolled her eyes but said nothing. She'd grown used to Zara's quirks over the weeks. Their destination was a region known as the Vale, a dense expanse of ooze-covered terrain where the Luminae believed the infection originated. Solon warned them it was dangerous, but the humans pressed on, determined to uncover answers. The shuttle landed near the edge of the Vale, and the team stepped onto the alien soil, their boots sinking slightly into the soft, ash-like ground. Almost immediately, things felt wrong. The air was heavy, pressing down on them like a physical weight. Strange whispers echoed faintly, too quiet to make out but impossible to ignore. Harper tightened her grip on her weapon, scanning the area warily. "This place gives me the creeps," she muttered. As they moved deeper, the environment grew stranger. Twisted remnants of crystalline structures jutted from the ground, their once bright surfaces now coated in pulsating black tendrils. The ooze itself seemed to react to their presence, rippling and shifting unnaturally. Zara knelt to examine a patch of it, her scanner humming softly. "It's generating some kind of electromagnetic field," she reported, frowning. "I've never seen anything like it." Suddenly, one of the tendrils lashed out, striking at Harper. She dodged just in time, firing a warning shot into the ooze. The impact caused it to writhe violently, sending waves of dark liquid surging toward them. "Fall back," Marcus barked, pulling Elena away from the advancing tide. They regrouped further back, adrenaline coursing through their veins. "What the hell was that?" Harper demanded, her voice tight with anger and fear. "It reacted to your weapon," Zara said, her mind racing. "Maybe it perceives aggression as a threat, or maybe it feeds off energy. We need to be careful." The team pressed on cautiously, avoiding direct confrontation with the ooze. But the deeper they went, the more surreal the landscape became. Glowing orbs floated in the air, casting eerie shadows on the ground. Hallucinations plagued them, visions of loved ones calling their names, memories they'd long buried surfacing unbidden. Marcus saw faces of those he failed during the war, their accusing stares piercing his soul. He clenched his jaw, forcing himself to focus. "Stay sharp," he growled. "It's messing with our heads." Eventually, they reached what appeared to be the core of the Vale, a massive pit filled with churning ooze. At its center pulsed a dark, writhing mass that seemed to pulse with malevolent intelligence. Zara's scanner went haywire, emitting a high-pitched whine before shutting down completely. "This is it," she whispered. "Whatever controls the ooze, it's here." Before they could decide their next move, disaster struck. A sudden tremor shook the ground, causing rocks to tumble from above. One of the team members, a scientist named Dr. Patil, lost his footing and fell into the pit, landing hard on the edge of the ooze. He screamed as tendrils snaked around him, dragging him closer to the core. "Help me," Patil cried, thrashing wildly. Marcus lunged forward, grabbing hold of a rope attached to his harness, but the ooze fought back, yanking harder. For a moment, it seemed like they might pull him free, but then the ooze surged upward, engulfing him completely. His screams cut off abruptly, leaving only silence. Stunned, the team retreated, grief and guilt weighing heavily on them. Back at the shuttle, no one spoke as they prepared to leave. Marcus stared out at the pit, his fists clenched. They had learned something important today, but at a terrible cost. "We'll come back," Elena said finally, her voice steady despite the pain in her eyes. "We have to." And though none of them voiced it, they all knew she was right. The fight was far from over. The team returned to the Resolute, shaken but determined. The loss of Dr. Patel weighed heavily on everyone, especially Marcus, who couldn't shake the image of the scientist being pulled into the ooze. He replayed the moment over and over in his mind, questioning whether he could have done more. Elena tried to comfort him, reminding him that they were dealing with forces beyond their understanding. "We can't save everyone," she said softly, though her own voice trembled with emotion. "But we can still make this count." Back on the Lumine homeworld, Solon greeted them with sorrowful gratitude. She had sensed the humans' pain through their shared connection and offered words of condolence. "Your sacrifice will not be forgotten," she said, her light flickering faintly. "But there is still hope. There are others who may aid you." "Others?" Elena asked, confused. Solon nodded, gesturing toward the horizon. "Long ago, before the ooze came, our world was visited by another species. They left behind creations, beings meant to protect us. But when the ooze spread, these guardians turned against us, corrupted by its influence." Zara's eyes lit up at the mention of alien technology. "You're saying there are bioengineered creatures out here? Like weapons or something?" "Not weapons," Solon corrected gently. "They were designed to harmonize with nature, to maintain balance. But now, they serve only the ooze." Harper crossed her arms skeptically. "Great. So instead of one monster, we got an army of them." Despite the grim news, the team decided to investigate. If these creatures, dubbed shadow scales by Zara, were once protectors, perhaps they could be reasoned with, or at the very least, studied for weaknesses. The following day, the team ventured back to the surface, this time heading toward a region marked by jagged peaks and deep ravines. According to Solon, it was where the shadow scales roamed most frequently. As they approached, the air grew colder and the ground beneath their feet felt unnaturally smooth, almost glass-like. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the canyon. Emerging from the shadows came the shadow scales, towering, serpentine creatures covered in iridescent scales that shimmered like oil slicks. Their eyes glowed faintly, and their movements were fluid yet predatory. Harper raised her weapon instinctively, but Marcus held up a hand. "Wait," he ordered. "Let's see what they do." To everyone's surprise, the shadow scales didn't attack immediately. Instead, they circled the group cautiously, emitting harmonic vibrations that resonated in the air. Zara quickly realized these sounds weren't random. They formed patterns, almost like language. Using her scanner, she began analyzing the frequencies, piecing together fragments of meaning. "They're communicating," Zara announced excitedly. "It's rudimentary, but I think I can translate some of it." Elena stepped forward cautiously, holding out her hands in a gesture of peace. "We're not your enemies," she said aloud, projecting her thoughts as clearly as possible. At first, there was no response. Then one of the shadow scales tilted its head, studying her intently. Slowly, it lowered itself closer to the ground, allowing Elena to approach. As Zara worked to establish communication, the rest of the team kept watch, wary of sudden aggression. But the shadow scales seemed curious rather than hostile. Through trial and error, Zara managed to convey their intent, to heal the planet and restore balance. The creatures responded with a series of complex tones, which Zara interpreted as agreement, if the humans could prove themselves trustworthy. "They want proof," Zara explained. "Something to show we're serious about helping." Marcus glanced at the others, then nodded. "Fine. We'll give them proof." Over the next few hours, the team devised a plan. Using portable terraforming equipment brought from the Resolute, they began clearing a small patch of land near the Shadow Scales territory. The process was slow and painstaking, requiring precise coordination to avoid triggering another violent reaction from the ooze. But as the black tendrils receded and fresh green shoots emerged from the soil, the Shadow Scales watched with growing interest. Finally, one of the creatures let out a deep, resonant hum, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the entire canyon. It was approval. The Shadow Scales bowed their massive heads, acknowledging the humans as allies. For the first time since arriving on the Lumine homeworld, the team felt a glimmer of optimism. They hadn't solved the problem yet, but they had gained powerful allies and a new understanding of the enemy they faced. "We're not alone anymore," Elena said quietly, watching the shadow scales disappear into the distance. Now, we fight together. With the shadow scales now on their side, the team returned to the Resolute to finalize their plan. The alliance was fragile but promising, and it gave them a fighting chance against the Black Ooze. Zara worked tirelessly in the ship's lab, analyzing data from the shadow scales and refining the nanobot technology designed to neutralize the ooze. Meanwhile, Alina coordinated with Solon and the Lumine, ensuring they understood the risks of what came next. The strategy was clear: flood the core of the Veil, the source of the ooze, with billions of nanobots programmed to break down its molecular structure. But getting close enough to deploy the bots would be nearly impossible. The ooze reacted violently to electromagnetic fields, which meant any attempt to approach the core directly would trigger an attack. Someone would need to guide the bots manually into position, a task that required navigating the heart of the infection alone. When Marcus heard the details of the plan, he didn't hesitate. "I'll do it," he said firmly during a meeting in the command center. His voice left no room for argument. Alina stared at him, her eyes wide with shock. "Marcus, no. It's suicide." "It's the only way," he replied, his tone calm but resolute. "You all have skills I don't. You're needed here. Me? I'm expendable." "That's not true," Alina protested, her voice rising. "You've done more than anyone expected. You've earned your place." "And that's why I'm doing this," Marcus interrupted, his gaze steady. "This is my chance to make things right, to actually save lives instead of taking them." The room fell silent. No one argued further. They knew Marcus well enough by now to recognize determination when they saw it. Harper clenched her jaw, looking away, while Zura bit her lip, clearly struggling to hold back tears. Even Solon, who had joined the discussion via holographic projection, seemed moved by his resolve. Preparations began immediately. A small pod equipped with a protective shield and a payload of nanobots was prepared for Marcus's journey into the Veil. Zara installed additional safeguards, though she knew none of it guaranteed survival. As the hours passed, the mood aboard the Resolute grew somber. Conversations were hushed, meals were eaten in silence, and everyone avoided the inevitable farewell looming ahead. On the eve of the mission, Alina found Marcus alone in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. She hesitated before approaching, unsure of what to say. Finally, she spoke softly. "You don't have to do this, you know." "Yes, I do," Marcus replied without turning around. After a pause, he added, "I've spent years running from who I am, from what I've done. Maybe this is how I stop running." Alina stepped closer, her heart aching. "You've already changed, Marcus. You don't owe anyone this." He finally looked at her, a faint smile touching his lips. "Maybe not, but if I can give these people, and yours, a real shot at survival, then it's worth it." They stood together in silence for a long moment, the weight of goodbye hanging between them. Before leaving, Alina reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." The next morning, the entire crew gathered in the hangar bay to see Marcus off. The pod gleamed under the harsh lights, its sleek design belying the danger within. As Marcus climbed inside, each member of the team approached to offer their farewells. Zara handed him a small device loaded with backup systems, her hands trembling slightly. Harper gave him a curt nod, her usual sarcasm replaced by unspoken respect. Even Solon offered words of gratitude, her light glowing brighter than it had in days. As the hatch sealed shut and the pod launched toward the surface, Marcus sat quietly, gripping the controls. He thought about the lives he'd taken, the wars he'd fought, and the person he used to be. For the first time in years, he felt at peace. Below, the team watched anxiously as the pod descended into the Veil. They could only hope Marcus's sacrifice wouldn't be in vain. The pod carrying Marcus descended into the heart of the Veil, its protective shield shimmering faintly as it pushed through waves of black ooze. Inside, Marcus gripped the controls tightly, His jaw clenched against the oppressive weight of the environment. The air outside was thick with corruption, and even within the safety of the pod, he could feel the ooze's malevolence pressing in on him. Glowing orbs floated past the windows, casting eerie shadows that danced across his face. He knew this place wasn't just dangerous. It was alive, aware, and determined to stop him. As the pod neared the core, the whispers began again. At first, they were faint, like distant murmurs carried on the wind. But soon, they grew louder, more insistent, until they filled his mind completely. Images flashed before his eyes, scenes from his past, moments he'd tried to bury, battles he'd fought, lives he'd taken. Faces of those he'd failed stared back at him, their expressions accusing. "You're not a hero," one voice hissed. "You'll never be enough." Marcus closed his eyes, forcing himself to focus. He'd faced these demons before, but never like this. The ooze wasn't just attacking his body. It was tearing apart his soul, exposing every flaw, every regret. For a moment, he faltered, doubt creeping into his thoughts. What if Alina was right? What if this was pointless? But then he remembered Solan's words, the gratitude in her light when she spoke of humanity's efforts. He thought of Zora's determination, Harper's grit, and Alina's unwavering belief in doing what was right. And he realized something. Maybe redemption wasn't about erasing the past. Maybe it was about making a choice, to stand up, even when everything inside you screamed to run. With renewed resolve, Marcus opened his eyes and steered the pod toward the pulsating mass at the center of the veil. The closer he got, the more violently the ooze reacted. Tendrils lashed out, slamming against the shield and causing the entire vessel to shake. Alarms blared as systems overloaded, but Marcus ignored them, focusing solely on reaching the core. Back on the Resolute, the team watched anxiously as readings streamed in from the pod. Zora monitored the nanobot's deployment progress, while Alina paced nervously, her hands clasped tightly together. Harper stood near the viewport, her arms crossed and her expression unreadable. Every tremor in the pod sent a jolt of fear through them, but there was nothing they could do except wait. Suddenly, the screen displaying Marcus's vitals flickered. His heartbeat spiked, and his breathing became erratic. "He's under strain," Zora exclaimed, frantically adjusting settings on her console. "The ooze is messing with his mind." Alina froze, panic gripping her chest. "Can we pull him out?" "No," Zora replied grimly. "If we interrupt now, the nanobots won't finish deploying. It has to be done manually." On the surface, Marcus fought through the chaos. The visions intensified, pulling him deeper into despair. But amidst the darkness, a single memory surfaced, one he hadn't thought of in years. It was a quiet moment during his childhood, sitting by a lake with his younger sister. She'd been laughing, tossing pebbles into the water, telling him how proud she was of him. That boy, that version of himself, had believed in goodness, in hope. Summoning every ounce of strength, Marcus activated the final sequence. The pod released the nanobots in a burst of golden light, flooding the core of the ooze. For an instant, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then the ooze recoiled, writhing and twisting as the nanobots worked to dismantle its structure. The ground shook violently, and the pod's shields began to fail. "Marcus, get out of there," Alina shouted into the comm link, though she knew it was futile. Marcus didn't respond. With the last of his energy, he guided the pod away from the collapsing core, ensuring the nanobots had time to complete their task. As the ooze let out one final, ear-splitting scream, the pod exploded in a flash of light. Silence fell aboard the Resolute. No one moved. No one spoke. Tears streamed down Alina's face as she stared at the blank screen, unable to accept what had just happened. But then something incredible occurred. The black ooze began to recede, dissolving into harmless ash. New life sprouted where it had once spread death. Slowly, the crew realized Marcus's sacrifice had worked. "He did it," Zora whispered, her voice trembling. He saved them. Far below, Solon and the Luminae gathered, their lights growing brighter as hope returned to their world. Though Marcus Kane was gone, his legacy would burn forever, not just among humans, but across the stars. Days passed after Marcus's sacrifice, and the Luminae homeworld began to heal. The black ooze that had once consumed everything in its path was now gone, leaving behind fertile soil and clear skies. Where death had reigned, life returned. Tiny green shoots pushed through the ground, crystalline structures regained their shimmering brilliance, and the Luminae themselves grew stronger, their lights burning brighter than they had in years. It was as if the planet itself was taking a deep breath after being suffocated for so long. On the Resolute, the mood was bittersweet. The crew celebrated their victory, but mourned the loss of Marcus. His absence weighed heavily on everyone, especially Alina, who found herself unable to sleep without replaying his final moments over and over in her mind. She often visited the observation deck late at night, staring out at the stars as though hoping to see some sign of him, a glimmer of light, or a whisper carried on the solar winds. But the void remained silent, and she was left with only memories. Harper, too, struggled with the aftermath. Though she rarely showed emotion, those closest to her noticed subtle changes. She spent less time snapping at others and more time helping Zara recalibrate equipment or assisting Alina with reports. When asked about it, she shrugged dismissively. "Someone has to keep things running," she muttered. But deep down, she knew Marcus's bravery had inspired her to step up, not just for herself, but for the team. Zara threw herself into her work, analyzing data collected during the mission and documenting every detail of the nanobot deployment process. Her findings would be invaluable for future missions, but she couldn't shake the guilt of not being able to save Marcus. Late one evening, as she sat alone in the lab, Solon appeared via holographic projection. The Luminae leader's light pulsed softly, almost hesitantly. "You grieve for your friend," Solon said gently. It wasn't a question. Zara nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I should have done more. I built all this tech, and it still wasn't enough." Solon floated closer, her glow warming slightly. "Your friend gave his life willingly. He understood the cost, and he chose to pay it. Do not dishonor his memory by doubting yourself." Her words struck a chord. For the first time since Marcus's death, Zara felt a flicker of peace. Maybe saving lives didn't always mean preventing loss. Sometimes it meant carrying the torch forward. Meanwhile, Alina worked tirelessly to strengthen the bond between humans and the Luminae. With Solon's guidance, she helped organize efforts to rebuild damaged regions of the planet. Teams of scientists and engineers collaborated with Luminae artisans, combining Earth's technology with the aliens' natural abilities. Together, they planted resilient crops brought from Earth and restored ancient crystalline formations that powered the Luminae society. As the days turned into weeks, the transformation became undeniable. Rivers flowed cleanly again, forests sprouted vibrant colors, and the air hummed with renewed energy. Even the shadow scales seemed calmer, their iridescent scales gleaming under the restored twilight sky. They no longer viewed humans as intruders, but as partners in healing their shared world. One evening, Alina stood alongside Solon near a newly revitalized grove. The Luminae leader turned to her light steady and warm. "Your people have given us more than survival," Solon said. "You have shown us hope, that even in our darkest hour, kindness can exist beyond ourselves." Alina smiled, though her heart still ached for Marcus. "We're still learning what it means to be kind," she admitted. "But maybe we're getting better at it." Before departing, the crew gathered one last time with the Luminae to honor Marcus's memory. A monument was erected near the edge of the veil, a simple stone etched with both human and Luminae symbols. Beneath it lay a shard of bioluminescent crystal gifted by Solon, glowing softly in perpetual tribute. As the Resolute prepared for the journey home, Alina looked back at the planet one final time. Though scared by tragedy, it was alive again, proof that even the smallest acts of courage could spark rebirth. And somewhere among the stars, she believed Marcus was watching, proud of what they'd accomplished together. This part focuses on healing, growth, and the lasting impact of Marcus's sacrifice, while setting the stage for humanity's evolving role in the galaxy. Let me know when you'd like to continue with Part 9. As the Resolute began its long journey back to Earth, the crew reflected on the mission that had changed them all. They had set out as representatives of humanity, a species known for its resilience and chaos, but they returned as something more. The Luminae's gratitude, the Shadowscale's alliance, and Marcus's sacrifice had forged connections that transcended worlds. For the first time, humanity wasn't just surviving, it was building bridges. Before leaving, the Luminae gifted the crew with shards of their crystalline essence. These fragments glowed faintly, pulsing with a gentle rhythm that seemed almost alive. Solon explained that each shard contained fragments of their collective knowledge, histories, philosophies, and insights into the universe. "Take these," she said, her light shimmering warmly. "Let them guide you as you continue your journey among the stars." Zara was particularly fascinated by the shards. As soon as they were safely aboard the Resolute, she began analyzing one using portable scanners. Her initial findings were astonishing. The Luminae's technology operated on principles far beyond anything humanity had developed, relying on harmonics and energy patterns rather than brute mechanical force. But what intrigued her most were hints buried deep within the data, references to other civilizations struggling against similar threats. "Wait a second," Zara muttered to herself, her eyes widening as she scrolled through lines of decoded information. She called Elena over, pointing excitedly at her screen. "Look at this. It mentions something called the Scourge. Multiple species have encountered it, in different forms, on different planets. Whatever caused the ooze might not have been an isolated incident." Elena frowned, leaning closer. "You think there's a connection? That someone, or something, is deliberately spreading destruction across the galaxy?" "It's possible," Zara replied. "Or maybe it's some kind of cosmic imbalance. Either way, if we're going to help others like the Luminae, we need to understand what we're dealing with." The implications were staggering. If the Black Ooze was part of a larger pattern, then humanity's role in the galaxy had just expanded exponentially. No longer were they simply saviors of one world, they could become guardians of many. Back on Earth, news of the mission spread quickly. Media outlets hailed the crew as heroes, though reactions were mixed. Some celebrated the success of Project Starbound, seeing it as proof that humanity could rise above its violent past. Others remained skeptical, questioning whether risking lives for aliens was worth the cost. Politicians debated funding future missions, while scientists clamored to study the Luminae shards and the nanobot technology used to combat the ooze. Amid the chaos, Elena threw herself into advocacy work. She founded the Interstellar Accord, an organization dedicated to fostering peaceful relationships with alien species and addressing galactic crises like the one faced by the Luminae. Her speeches inspired millions, painting a vision of humanity as a beacon of hope rather than a harbinger of conflict. "We've spent centuries looking inward," she told the packed auditorium during one event. "Now it's time to look outward and see how much farther we can go when we stand together." Marcus's legacy loomed large in everything they did. His name became synonymous with courage and selflessness, a reminder that even the smallest acts of bravery could change the course of history. Harper quietly ensured his story was told accurately, recounting his final moments with a mix of admiration and sorrow. "He didn't hesitate," she said during an interview. "Not once, and neither should we." Zara, meanwhile, continued studying the Luminae data, uncovering clues about the mysterious Scourge. Her research hinted at other civilizations fighting similar battles, some winning, others losing. Each discovery fueled her determination to prepare humanity for whatever came next. "We're not done yet," she told Elena one evening as they reviewed her findings. "This is just the beginning." As the Resolute approached Earth's atmosphere, the crew gazed out at their home planet. From space, it looked fragile yet resilient, a tiny blue-green jewel floating in the vastness of the cosmos. They knew challenges awaited them back on the surface, but they also carried with them something invaluable: hope. And so, as humanity prepared to take its place among the stars, the seeds of friendship planted on the Luminae homeworld began to sprout, not just between humans and aliens, but within humanity itself. The return of the Resolute to Earth was met with a mix of celebration and controversy. Crowds gathered at spaceports and city squares, cheering as footage of the crew's heroics played on massive screens. Children waved makeshift flags bearing Marcus's name, while others held signs reading "Hope Beyond Stars." Yet not everyone shared in the jubilation. Skeptics argued that humanity had no business meddling in alien affairs, while opportunists clamored for access to the Luminae shards and advanced technology brought back from the mission. Despite the divided opinions, Alina stood firm in her belief that humanity's future lay among the stars. She worked tirelessly to promote the Interstellar Accord, traveling across continents to rally support. Her speeches painted a vision of cooperation, not just between humans and aliens, but within humanity itself. "We've spent too long tearing each other apart," she said during one address. "Now we have a chance to build something greater than ourselves, a legacy of peace, discovery, and unity." Her words resonated deeply with many, especially younger generations eager to explore beyond Earth's boundaries. Schools began incorporating lessons about the Luminae and the mission into their curricula, inspiring dreams of interstellar diplomacy and scientific breakthroughs. Even governments started shifting priorities, allocating funds toward space exploration and research initiatives inspired by Zora's work. Zara herself became a household name, hailed as a pioneer in xenotechnology. Her analysis of the Luminae shards revealed groundbreaking insights into energy manipulation and sustainable engineering. These discoveries sparked a wave of innovation on Earth, leading to cleaner energy sources, improved medical treatments, and advancements in terraforming techniques. But Zara never lost sight of the bigger picture. Late at night, she pored over data hinting at the scourge, determined to uncover its origins before it struck again. Harper, too, found new purpose. Once reluctant to trust anyone outside her team, she now trained recruits for future missions, teaching them survival skills and tactical strategies honed through years of experience. Though she still carried an edge of skepticism, she softened around those who shared her commitment to protecting both human and alien lives. "If we're going out there," she told her students, "we'd better be ready to face whatever comes our way." Meanwhile, Solon and the Luminae continued rebuilding their world, guided by the knowledge exchanged with humanity. The alliance forged during the crisis remained strong, with regular communications ensuring mutual growth. The shadow scales, once feared as monsters, became symbols of resilience and adaptation, their harmonious integration into the ecosystem serving as a testament to the power of understanding. Back on Earth, debates raged about humanity's role in the galaxy. Some saw Project Starbound as a turning point, a sign that Deathworlders could rise above their violent nature. Others warned against overextending themselves, fearing the consequences of stepping into conflicts they didn't fully understand. But amid the uncertainty, one truth stood clear: humanity had proven capable of compassion, sacrifice, and ingenuity. On a quiet evening months after the mission, Alina stood alone on a hill overlooking the ocean. In her hand, she held a small fragment of the Luminae crystal gifted by Solon. Its light pulsed gently, as if alive, reminding her of the bond they had formed. She thought of Marcus often, wondering what he would think of the changes sweeping across Earth. Would he see hope in the progress they'd made, or would he remind her of the challenges still ahead? As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Alina smiled faintly. Humanity's journey among the stars was far from over. Mistakes would be made, sacrifices demanded, and fears confronted. But so too would triumphs be celebrated, friendships forged, and lives saved. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of Earth's atmosphere, countless worlds awaited discovery. And though the road ahead promised danger and uncertainty, Elena knew one thing for certain. Humanity was ready to answer the call. For better or worse, the dawn of a new era had begun.